Okay, it's time for a fireside chit chat. Gather around, everyone, and get comfortable. We need to have a conversation about voting in America. As I'm sure you've heard by now, President Trump has issued the executive order preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections. I took the time to read the executive order, and there are parts of it I agree with, and several where I feel like we are missing the mark. Essentially, the executive order is stating its intent to, quote, protect the integrity of our election process. I think we can all agree that we need to have integrity in our election process. However, the executive order goes on to state that in order to ensure this integrity, it is going to enforce citizenship requirement for federal elections. This means in order to vote, we have to provide proof of our U.S. citizenship by providing a U.S. passport, ID compliant with the requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005, official military ID card, or valid federal or state government issued photo ID that indicates that we are a U.S. citizen. Additionally, to, quote, improve election assistance commission, states will lose federal funding if they do not comply. The executive order states that absentee or mail-in ballots received after the election day, even if they are postmarked before, should not be counted in the final tabulation of votes. This executive order is very similar to the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or SAVE Act, that's currently pushed by the Republicans in the House. It also requires very similar forms of ID to prove citizenship for new voters, as well as existing voters after a move or a name change. But the executive order and the SAVE Act have major problems. For starters, 1 in 10 voting age American citizens, which is an estimated of 21.3 million people, either don't have a proof of citizenship document like a birth certificate, passport, or naturalization certificate, or don't have easy access to one. And people of color are more likely to not have a document proving citizenship. Obtaining these documents takes time and money. Married women who have changed their last name will require additional documentation as their birth certificates won't match their new legal name. So you're now going to have to track down and prove like the marriage license along with all these other forms of documentation just to prove you're a U.S. citizen because you got married. If someone registers by mail, they must present their documents in person to the office of the appropriate election official before the voter registration deadline passes. Requiring voters to show documents in person is going to be particularly burdensome for rural voters, people who rely on public transit, and people who cannot leave work during business hours. The executive order and the SAVE Act are all being done on the pretense that we have a big problem with non-citizens voting in our elections. Here's the thing though. There is zero evidence that we are having all these non-citizens voting in our election. Zero. If someone could find evidence for it, please send it my way. I would love to see it. Because the current federal voter registration form requires voters to swear under penalty of perjury that they are U.S. citizens, and some states take additional steps to verify citizenship. Non-citizens who attempt to vote face steep penalties like jail fines and deportation. A non-citizen voting in a U.S. election is extremely rare. The Republicans are claiming to be fixing a non-existent problem, when in actuality, all this executive order and SAVE Act will do is make it more difficult for U.S. citizens to exercise their constitutional right to vote.